to 411 T Street, unfiltered conversations on mental health and the issues in society that impact us all. This is where we break down the barriers and explore the topics that intersect with the challenges of modern society. I'm Dr. Milan Bray, and each week we'll dive into raw, honest discussions on the systemic issues that affect us all. We'll hear from experts, thought leaders, and everyday people offering real stories and actionable insights to help you achieve an understanding of the issues that matter most. No filters, no sugarcoating, just real talk. Welcome to 411 T Street. All right, so today, as we already said, amazing experts, and we have Erica Terblanche. Just love that name. That's so pretty. And she is a positive psychologist. She is a psychologist and an author, and she has so much more to share about what she does. And so let's just take a deep dive into, as a psychologist, what is a positive psychologist, apart from somebody who should already be positive in their psychology?
Absolutely love that, Milan. So, psychology, and I really want to take this back to the start of the positive psychology movement about 30 years ago. Traditionally, psychology has been focused on helping people to not be mentally ill. So it's sort of, if you want to talk about the minus 10 to 0 of mental health. And then the chair of the American Association of Psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman, got despondent about the fact that we left on the table. What about human flourishing, thriving? What about 0 to 10? What about making the very most of your one precious life? Where's the research and the psychology that helps people to do that? And that is the arena of positive psychology, of how we actually live a happy, worthwhile, well lived, actualized life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Yeah, yeah, I don't think I know one person who couldn't benefit from that, self included. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's super sticky, messy, so many words. Not fun. Just not fun
Mhm.
right now. This is a very
Yeah.
tumultuous time that we're living in, and I think a lot of people are just really struggling with how to be more positive in their lives, how to find the joy in every day. And I think, reading the books, theoretically, I think everyone could give some kind of an answer, right? You could Eckhart Tolle that, you could Carl Jung that, there's a lot, there's a lot of things that you can do. But,
Well,
the fact is that people, some people are just trying to eat, some people are just trying to not get sucked into the spiral of politics or war or whatever is going on. So,
absolutely.
what does that 0 to 10 mean? And how do we, as humans, find our footing every single day in all the the rubble of life?
Sure. That's such a beautiful and compassionate question because it's recognizing the full breadth of where everybody is struggling at different places. Yes, you can echo totally it, but and I think that that was my struggle in the beginning before I encountered positive psychology. I studied psychology. I read all the self-help books. I wanted to find, and yes, I explored non-secular arenas as well. Um, I wanted to find reliable ways of how every man and every woman, whether whatever your challenges are, can actually be a little bit more resilient, cope a little bit better, be a little bit happier, and make the best of your life, no matter what your particular circumstances are. And whether it is to just survive and put food on the table for your kids, or whether you're fighting for your life in a war arena, or in a war zone, that these tools and skills, number one, is something that you can really trust because it's backed by robust, repeatable, scientific, validated, peer-reviewed, journal published papers. It's backed by proper research, and that these tools are applicable through all aspects of life. And no matter where you find yourself, the point is, if you do, and forgive me if I dive straight in there because it's such an accessible thing, if you do a little bit of cardiovascular exercise 3 times a week for 30 minutes, what happens to your serotonin, to your dopamine circuits, to your endorphins is human. It's going to happen to you whether you're fighting to put food on the table for your kids or whether you're in a war zone. And it is going to help you to cope better. And so, in the science of positive psychology, there's a whole array of tools, measures, mechanisms, things, skills that we can use no matter where we are to help us cope better with life. And that is why I'm so passionate about it, because it is something that you can really put your foot on and trust in no matter what your circumstances are. And I can even talk a bit about the building blocks of the well-lived life if you want, in a later conversation.
Yeah, what that's actually so I have the Tay Academy and we teach values-based social emotional learning. And some of the coping strategies, even the coping strategies that we teach children are, if you're feeling really angry, go take a walk, even if it's 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Get up, and it's and more simplified, it's a pattern interruption, right? So we want to interrupt the thinking and the pattern, but oftentimes we just sit with that thought. And I'm hands up, I'm guilty. Two hands up, I'm guilty. Um, you
We all are, don't worry.
you take that thought and you run with it, and then you bury the horse, and then it's a dead horse. You bury the horse, then you excavate it, and you're like, are you sure it's dead? I don't think it's dead. And then you're like, oh, it's dead. And then you bury it again, and then you're like, no, I better check one more time. There might be some life left in it. Anyway, maybe that's just me. Maybe
Yeah.
I do that.
Nope.
But
Nope. We all have lines.
eventually, unfortunately, I still sometimes excavate, even though it's been years, and I'm pretty sure the horse is dead, but I feel like I need to look again. So,
Mm-hmm.
we do, we go down these spirals, and it's just, for me, it's maddening because it's like, oh my God, stop it. And that's even something that I do. I know you've heard that too. And when we're looking at self-help, there's those phrases like cancel, clear, release, stop, stop it. Those things that we even say to ourselves to just go, no, 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 not today, Satan.
Not today, Satan. Exactly.
So
You could, yeah.
it's so we have those moments, and you're absolutely right. We do need to have these ways to cope, and I mean, exercise and getting out of our pattern is so important. But what else do we, I
I mean,
mean,
let's talk about getting out the analogy. I love the dead horse. Absolutely love that. But
it's
the
gross.
analogy that I often use is, at least your horse is dead and buried. I mean, but most of my clients actually has a lion that chases them around the moat.
Oh,
And the more they go round and round, the deeper the moat gets, and nor the lion nor the client can get out. So, and the point is that we all ruminate. We all get stuck in rumination. And very often, and this is why I started with exercise, we can use the body as a quick release to get out of it. So, one of the quickest ways to get out of a rumination in the moment is to start using your breathing. So, if you are feeling completely anxious and you are overwhelmed and flooded with a particular thought chasing you on that mode, one of the primary ways that we can bypass our thinking, our prefrontal cortex, is to go straight to the sympathetic nervous system. and to calm the sympathetic nervous system down and get it out of fight and flight. And how do you do it? Here's a simple technique. You use 5-9 breathing. In fact, they use this when they get to emergency scenes and they have to get people's emotions down so people can react to commands and so forth. And it's as simple as cheese. You sit up straight and you breathe in through your nose for 5 counts. And then you exhale for 9 counts through your lips, imagining like you're blowing on an imaginary candle. And you're blowing hard enough to make the flame move,
Mm-hmm.
but not to extinguish. So it's not to extinguish the flame, but and you exhale through your lips for 9 counts. Not seconds, because we'll asphyxiate. Counts. Your own counts. You can decide how long. But the 5-9 technique is almost like an emergency brake immediately on your emotions. And then what happens is your sympathetic nervous system literally gets out of the fight and flight response. And then you can choose whether you want to get back into the mode with the lion or not. So that's one technique that you can actually use to reliably stop that rumination. Of course, there are many other techniques. So sometimes the dead horse has something to tell you. There's a smell, and we actually need to deal with the smell.
Mm-hmm.
And, Milan, sometimes we need to actually sit with our negative emotions. And one of the key things that we can do with that is to ask the negative, invite it in. Rumi wrote that beautiful poem, The Guest House, where he says, everything is welcome, the malice, the envy, the shame, the joy. Welcome them all in because they come as a messenger.
Mm-hmm.
So take that negative emotion, and rather than using all your energy to suppress it, you bring that negative emotion out into the open. And instead of it being behind you, you bring it up front and you name it. That's the first. If you've read Brené Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart, the first thing she
I didn't
teaches
read that.
us is, not read it yet. It's a superb book. But name your emotion, number one. What is really going on? Is it joy or is it more excitement? Is it ecstasy? What is it exactly?
Asshole.
Is it
It's
sadness?
asshole.
Huh? So exactly. Is it mad, angry, rage? Is it disappointment, betrayal? What's really going on? Then you name this emotion, and when you've named it, it now has a noose around the neck, and you can sit it down for a cup of tea, and you
Mm-hmm.
can ask this emotion. Mhm. And you can literally ask this emotion, what is it that you are trying to communicate to me? And what do you need me to do? This is actually from acceptance and commitment theory.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want me to do so that you can leave my life?
Mm.
What do I need to do so that this dead horse does not come back, buried or unburied? So, and here,
The
and
haunting
here's the
figure.
power. Huh? The,
As a haunting figure, the ghost of the ghost of the dead horse.
was a haunting figure. And here's again an example of the breadth of what positive psychology brings as tools. Because here's acceptance and commitment theory. Actually name the emotion, look at the emotion, bring it to the prefrontal cortex, actually begin to not fear it, feel it, but think about it and ask it, what is the message? And then decide an action that you can take that will actually help you to clear that emotion forever. So another technique is to journal, because very often when we journal, we know that in the first bit of journaling, nothing happens, but later on, the fluff. And I don't know if you know the morning pages technique, where you write for 3 pages without stopping. Round about the second page.
Oh, I do believe we have Erica froze on us, and that's okay. So let me just recap while we get her back. She's talking about this breath work where we take in 5 breaths through our nose and we're exhaling those breaths out with 9 short breaths, just very quick. Not the breath shouldn't come out hard enough that you in fact blow out your candle, as she said. So it's an immediate way she shared to go ahead and change that pattern to get out of that fight or flight mode. So breath work, super, super important. And the other thing that she is talking about is she's talking about um, naming our emotions, coming up with ways that we can, um, set to really to embrace what we're feeling, as opposed to the things that we oftentimes do is we tank those emotions, we put them aside, we don't deal with them, and then they just grow into these very fueled monsters that become harder to tame. And she's come back to us, so we're going to let her finish her thought.
Exactly. And I couldn't have used a better analogy. It's probably divine intervention that I left for a little, but you could really, you described it so well. And often in my coaching practice, when we talk about suppressed emotions, it's like a dragon that
Mm,
sits behind you. And the more you suppress it, the more it feeds the dragon. And you are living in the shadow of that undealt with emotion. And if you think you are not, you are doing all sorts of strange things to get out of that painful shadow. You don't want to be in its shadow, and we all act very often out of our repressed emotions. And the other interesting thing about repressing our emotions, and if we're not allowing things like grief or sadness to be dealt with, the research is unequivocal. People who use repression as a strategy um, have far greater risk of cardiovascular disease and far greater risk of anxiety and depression.
mm,
And people who cry a lot, interestingly enough, have significantly less risk of anxiety, depression, and even there's some research that indicates there's a link through to dementia.
mm.
Um, so tears are really helpful to help us to process through difficult emotion and rather than repression.
Well, and that's why men have heart attacks, many more heart attacks than women do. That supports that. But I
Mhm.
think, there's a lot of people, when we think about our shadow self, if you've even come across that concept in your life,
Mhm.
we think, we need to hide the dark aspects of ourselves. We don't want people to see those things. I'm guilty of that too, but to be whole and complete, we have to embrace all the good, the bad, the ugly, because even the quote unquote bad, whatever we think we define as bad, is serving you for some reason or other. There's aspects of us that have helped us navigate some of the most tumultuous times. And we have
Absolutely.
to honor that. But I think it seems like, we're being asked to just swallow it. Just swallow it. Don't
Oh,
you just swallow. It's like
just swallow the dog.
just
Don't you
swallow it.
dare.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly,
you
exactly.
dare.
There's
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
line in a movie. It's I'm admittedly like the Deadpool movies, and he has this line where he was talking about it's like kids and their trauma bragging. Why can't they just swallow it like the rest of us and make it into, what did he say? Make it into accomplishment or cancer.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is hilarious.
And
That is
it's so
absolutely,
true. It's
oh,
so
that
true.
is
Either
so,
we use all that rage and pain and the shit that we just keep tanking down, and we use it to just fuel whatever
yeah.
we need to be doing, or we get sick, you know?
Oh, we get
I
sick,
agree.
exactly. So Milan, and what is so interesting to me is that as human beings, the more one grows in compassion and in understanding, you first begin to really see your own dark side so clearly. I mean, and then recognize that all of us have it. We all have a dark side. And what is a dark side exactly? Because in some culture, what would be a dark side is not a dark side in another culture.
Mhm.
And a dark side is just what we have defined from a social perspective as something that is not pro-social in that particular context. So, and like you so rightly said, very often our dark side developed out of trauma and it was a coping skill. And at some point in our life, it was the only thing that saved our butts. And
Mm.
here's the interesting thing: when you begin to really know your dark side and being able to name it, whether it is being controlling, whether it's being envious and super uber competitive, or whatever your dark side is, if you can name it, you are in a position to decide whether you want to keep it or change it to a more pro-social or more adaptive behavior. That choice is power. And my argument is in that moment when you actually know what your dark side is, you've confronted it, you've accepted it,
Mhm.
and you've stopped shaming it, and you choose to keep it or change it. That's a moment of true personal accountability and real freedom and real integration. Because you may um, choose to still comfort eat because it's you get your anxiety down by at the end of the day. And the alternative is actually you're going to use heroin. So you'd rather going to hit the Haagen-Dazs because that's the way you're going to deal with it until you can afford therapy. I'm using a silly example, but when
A
we
delicious way
know
to go, to be honest.
how, huh? The
It's a delicious way to go.
best way to go. So
Delicious coping
if
strategies.
yeah, and if we can just allow, because shame is never the pathway of healing. And if we keep on shaming our dark side, there's never an opportunity for it to come into the light so that you can choose whether you keep that behavior or leave it. Shame is not the solution. It is, but it maintains the problematic, if it is problematic for your situation.
Absolutely. I think the
Yeah.
challenge is that um, I I mean, just speaking of my own personal experience, I remember
Yeah.
so many times, if I didn't hear it once, I heard it probably thousands of times in my childhood. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Mm,
And
mm.
and then, there was some religious ideologies that also supported the shame and guilt. But I think also just if we take that out, I think in societies, many societies, women specifically seem to struggle with this far more than men. Not that men don't have shame and guilt. I'm not suggesting that at all. They do, absolutely. They're very hard on themselves and they express that in a different way. But I think society um, has far more expectations for women than they have for men, and it's really kind of interesting to me. We saw this even in the United States election, um, what the expectations were for Kamala Harris's campaign as opposed to what the expectations were for Donald Trump's campaign, and the different standards that she was held to as opposed to, what he was held to. And I think this pushes out to women, when we do express ourselves, we're getting all emotional and crazy, or we're being a bitch, and it's just like we
Mm,
can't just have our moment and have our space without somebody slapping a word to it, or defining it, or
mm,
judging it, or
mm,
shaming it, or whatever. And so we learn to do
mm,
that ourselves, right? So I shouldn't be acting like this. I need to
mm.
get my need to get my shit together,
Gosh,
I can't I can't
this is
I can't lose it now.
wow, wow. And I just want to bring it back to the previous comment you made where you said that that's why men have more heart attacks. And it gets back to this thing about repressing.
Hmm.
It's not welcome to have your moment and pull your eyes out in public. It just, I mean, it's not entirely welcome. It is not the thing that is normative. That's not what
Hmm.
we do.
Hmm.
And we are encouraged to repress it, swallow it, just swallow it. And the cost is enormous. The cost is enormous. Do you know that in most countries, the suicide rate of men is twice as high as women?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
And
I
this
think
is
women try more, but men are more successful. if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I'd have to
Yeah,
Google.
there's some indica statistic on that women try more often, but men are more successful. Point still is that this whole strategy of repression and not having and being able to show has enormous consequences for our mental health. It's directly linked to increased depression, increased anxiety,
Mhm.
and it's interesting that we keep raising our children in this way if we know the consequences and why we are not teaching boys that it's not a shame to cry. Actually, it's a shame not to. Why do we not teach our children that free expression of emotion is actually really welcome and it is a healthy way to cope with what is going on? I mean, how many times have you had friends who've gone through deep grief from losing a loved one and then get medicated?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I
Mm,
do. I do. Yeah, it is very, very confusing. And, just at least in this country, the drug abuse, the drug addiction rates are astronomical. We have
mhm.
the highest youth incarceration rate in the world. We're
Right.
we're not doing very well. Self-harm, I don't know what the numbers are now, but I was reading one statistic, it was a while ago, but on average, like 150,000 children go to the ER for self-harm. And every what people don't understand is and I often hear this with parents, and you probably do too. It's like
Mm,
uh so and so little Jimmy is being, he's so rude, he's so disrespectful, he doesn't listen. And
mhm,
what people don't remember is that everything that we do is communication. It's the communicate, whether it's a verbal communication of I feel, and if they don't have those words, if they don't have the ability to express how they feel for whatever particular reason, whether that's they live in a closed family system, or their parents are struggling, or there's so many things, trauma, abuse, lions, tigers, bears, right? It just there's so many things. Um, but this communication, everything that's happening is a way of them trying to communicate. So the problem is that, and I think this is pretty fundamental, is I see, and maybe you agree, a lot of people aren't listening, and they're not even listening to themselves. This again goes exactly back to what you're saying, because we just swallow it.
mm,
Like, I'm not going to listen to this
mm.
pain that I have, and I'm
Exactly.
guilty too. I have a pain, I'm like, oh, you know what, it's fine. I'll be
Yeah.
fine.
It'll go away.
It'll go away. But the
It'll
pain
go
in our
away.
body, the anger that we're expressing, it's all some kind of communication that we are not acknowledging, that we're not listening to from outside or from inside. So, but again, how do we, I mean, what's the magic? I mean, there needs to, because it seems like we are moving further in the direction. Oh, well, lost her again. It seems like we're moving further in the direction of not being able to, or wanting to support ourselves and our needs. We're so tied up in this more capitalistic ideology of first and foremost, I need to make sure that, money is my priority. My job is my priority. We're not prioritizing the things that mean the most. And I think this is actually a huge issue fundamentally, figuring out where our values lie. And that's a big conversation. And I've lost Erica, but this is actually how I met Erica. She was with us at the G100 Leadership Conference, and we talked about values and volunteerism being the pillars of industry, nation, and cause. And these are some fundamentals. So where do we sit with our value structure? Do we value our mental health? Do we value our physical health? Do we value our inner peace? Do we value our mental sanity? Or do we value the things like money and a new car and a bigger house and the latest iPhone or, the latest trend. So much, so many and so much of society is so completely focused on the misalignment of what values means. And it really has to go back to some of these fundamentals of love, truth, peace, right conduct, and nonviolence, and putting those as our moral compass and our north, as opposed to the things that cause us stress and anxiety and challenges. And these are the things that give us angst. So why don't we, I mean, it's all very utopian, but how do we learn to focus on the right things as opposed to focusing on, I don't want to say the wrong things, because there's nothing is neither good nor bad. It's the mind that thinks it's so. But giving balance to those things, balance to the authentic living, and getting the nice car. So how do we get there?
I have to apologize.
That's
We
okay.
have something in
Life
we have
happens.
something in South Africa. Well, we've got something called load shedding, which means we have not got electricity for some hours of the day in
Oh,
the grid.
and
So every city, yes, and then all systems go down because it's your turn for the generators to kick in, and then we all go to battery cells that we have in our homes. So, there's always something to be grateful for. The battery cell is charged, and we only have 2 hours of load shedding today. So that's okay.
very nice. Yeah. So see, and these are things too, like as Americans, these are not things that we
Hmm.
think about. We don't, we turn on a switch. No one tells
Yeah,
us when not to have power or water or whatever,
yeah,
and yeah, we,
absolutely. That's why I mentioned it, because
yeah.
sometimes we live in a reality where we've actually stopped seeing the great, great fortune that we live in, and the abundance. And we were talking about the children before, and young people, and their struggle and the amount of self-harm and how our kids are really, really struggling. And I think it's because often in our modern, very comfortable lives, forgive me for saying this, Milan, in our very comfortable lives, we lose focus on what we actually have, and we over focus on what we don't have.
Mhm.
And in this over focus, there's this rife, toxic comparative competition, and it's driven, and the flame is driven by social media, just helping us to intensify this over focus on the self. And no wonder we have seen this enormous decline in young people's mental health since 2012. We have an anxiety and depression epidemic amongst our young people. Um, one
Pandemic.
of my most, say again, the
Pandemic.
pandemic, I think is you I've got goosebumps when you said that. It's a pandemic.
Hmm.
In 2021, the Sapiens Lab, it's one of those reputable reports that try to measure global mental health.
Hmm.
So in over the years, they've increased the number of countries that they survey.
Hmm.
So in 2021, they surveyed, I think, 64 countries. And what they showed is that the cohort that was the most unhappy by two variances more than any other age cohort, significantly more, were the 18 to 24, the youngest cohort, 18 to 24-year-olds. What was striking is that they were the unhappiest in every single country surveyed. It's a global phenomenon. And what was most striking is that in 2010, they were the happiest cohort globally by far. You
Yeah.
know, can we see the tsunami? Can we see this tsunami of lack of values, of a paucity of values that is hitting our children, sweeping our children away, literally? And that's why I am so enthused by this podcast that you have, and your perspective on values, and really looking at the values of love and trust, and because those are the things that will get us out of this mess, is my deepest belief.
Yeah.
If we find a way to gamify and institutionalize social media platforms,
Hmm.
a way for kids to learn these values, engage with these values, that it becomes sexy to be kind, you know?
Yeah, no, I mentioned this to someone else one time, and it seems like, and I'm guilty of this too. Because society has become so societies, and I've lived all over the world, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not just
Mm-hmm.
America, it's not just
Mm-hmm.
Canada, it's not just wherever. Everybody's doing it. It's so trendy. We
What
people
is that?
People, it's like if people are kind, oftentimes the thought that the other person has is, what do you want? Because it seems like
Mm.
kindness is often used as a manipulation tactic as opposed
Yeah.
to authentic, authentically authentic.
Mm.
There you
Yeah.
go. That was so profound. Um, so yeah, it is really moving back into these fundamental values of love, truth, peace, right conduct, nonviolence, but moving away from this, idea that there's like romantic love, there's friendship, there's love of your car. No, 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 no. Love is two things.
Mhm.
It's unconditional and it is service to others. That's it. And underneath that, when we are talking about unconditional love, we're talking about empathy. We're talking about compassion and tolerance and acceptance and caring and kindness. There's a whole list of words that goes underneath that. And when we align with
Mhm.
those values and not, because that all fits into romantic love and friendship, and it's
Yeah.
all those things. It's okay to be kind, but we are just so
Mhm.
wary of what people want, what people's intentions are, because it is such a
Mhm.
me, 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 and not in a good, like, harmonizing way.
Mhm.
They do in,
Exactly.
um, but yeah, and one,
Yeah.
I say this to the kids. Imagine you could take a quiz at school. And all you had to do so you use big long test, right? And all you had to do is get the first one right, and magically the rest of the quiz was 100%. That's love. If we can get love right, then truth
Yeah.
works, then peace,
Sure.
then right conduct
Yeah.
works, and nonviolence
Absolutely.
works. But
Absolutely.
we can't even get that far. We love things and use people. Like, what?
Yeah. What exactly? And this is why we're in a mess. The longest study ever on human happiness is called the Grant study. It was started in the 1930s with a cohort, I think about 900 young men.
Mhm.
And what they did is, over a period of 90 years, they've surveyed them year on year and year, and basically asking the question, what makes for a happy, worthwhile, and successful life? So when you look back, what was it? Was it fame? Was it things, loving things? Was it wealth, success, affluence, status, community? What was it? What was it? And what they found, 90 years of data, and go, I get so excited. It's like I'm a data junkie. If you condense the finding of the study to one single sentence, or to one variable that they found,
Mhm.
what is the greatest predictor that you would be alive at 85, healthy, and reporting a happy, fulfilled, and successful life? Single greatest predictor, 90 years of data. It's the
Connection. I would say
love.
connection. Love and connection. Yeah.
Love and connection.
Authentic
It's the
connection. Yeah.
quality. Yeah, it's the, and I'm glad that you used the word connection, because that's exactly it. It is the quality of our human relationships throughout our life. And the way the scientists define quality is, they said, those relationships where you have a true connection, where you are accepted, foibles and all, warts and all, as you are, and actually where your sympathetic nervous system can
Mm-hmm.
come out of fight and flight. So, not the quantity of your relationships as on social media,
Mm-hmm.
not how unbelievably judgmental those relationships are with 10,000 strangers who follow you on Instagram. No, it's those relationships that hold the most vulnerable, shadowy parts of you safe.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. That. So your point that love makes the world go round and will get us out of this mess and all the other values stuck. That's the truth. And what I find interesting, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in South Africa, we do not yet have in schools an organized way of teaching children the basic key skills of how to love, acceptance, rather being appreciative than judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness, how to forgive, um, how to communicate, how to use conflict to improve connection rather than to rupture the relationship, rushing into repair relationship. We we taught our children Bowlby's basic attachment styles. I mean, it's one of the most robust relationship theories out there. It's been here for 50 years. It's robust. Why do the kids not yet know about anxious, secure, and ambivalent and avoidant attachment? Why? It drives me crazy because our kids should be given this. They should, if you go onto Facebook, you should be able to say, I'm ambivalently, anxiously attached, or whatever, as a way
You
of
see this little 2-year-old
identity.
rolling up on you, like, excuse me, but I'm feeling. You're like, wait, you're two. It would be an awesome
That's
conversation.
hilarious. It's hilarious. Oh, but so why the biggest thing, and and when you, like I said to you, I studied at many feet, and when you look at the big books, and I know religion has left us in a very dark places sometimes, but love is a pervasive message.
It's
It is
every doc.
possibly, may I say, it's the pervasive message. And now positive psychology 2000 years later or 3000 years later jumped on the bandwagon and said, oh yeah, we found out that it's still love. It's still love.
And Eric
And
was
why
like,
don't we
duh.
teach? Duh, exactly. The teenagers are like, oh, I roll. Because I mean, we know this, and yet the skills of connection, we are becoming poor. A friend of mine who's a psychologist says that, and she works a lot with teenagers, she says the kids come in with problems. And instead of talking to her, they actually WhatsApp with her in
Mhm.
the room,
True
in
story.
the room. Can't talk, can't communicate, can't connect.
That's why I developed the Tay Academy, the advancement of empathy and integrity,
Mhm.
because I 100 billion thousand gajillion% agree with you. The pushback is always, oh, we don't have the funding or we don't blah, blah, blah. So I created a way that you can implement it into every subject so that kids are getting social emotional learning from the time they walk into the door until the time they leave.
Wow.
But here's the thing, and at least in
Yeah.
this country, social emotional learning, that word, that phrase, not word, those words has somehow
Yeah. Yeah.
dirty. Like, who are you to teach my kids values? That's like, say
Yeah.
what? Like, love is
Yeah.
the essence. There is not one
Yeah.
person that can convince me that love can buy you happy. Yes, it gives you freedom, and it definitely, you can do good things with it. You can pay your bills. There's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs that's met with love, that stays
Hmm.
security, 100%, 100%.
Belonging,
Yeah,
belonging,
and yeah,
self-actualization.
you need
Hmm.
that. Yes, you need money. But it's a tool, but it cannot buy you authenticity. It cannot buy you truth. It can buy you sycophants, but it cannot buy you truth. It cannot buy you
Yeah.
authentic connection. It cannot buy you
Yeah.
compassion. It cannot buy you empathy. Now, I suppose some would say,
Hmm.
well, I can buy a therapist. Yeah, true, but that's their job, and that's not the authentic connection. Like, you need to be out there making those connections, having those real conversations. Your therapist isn't, I mean, maybe going to be with you forever, but that's a bigger issue with you and your therapist, and we don't need to talk about that right now. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of gray lines there.
so we won't,
Yeah.
passing that, you know what I mean? Like, nobody can convince me that love is that love is not the driving force and the thing that makes you, or will bring you, not makes you, but will bring you the joy and the peace and the purpose. It's love. The rest of that shit, it comes and goes. That's it. And all we do, and you brought it up so brilliantly when you said it just drives us to want more. And when you were on your little hiatus, when you had to do your generators, I was actually talking about that. Like, we've lost the plot. We've lost the plot of
Hmm.
life. It's not about getting more
Hmm.
crap
Yes.
off of Amazon, although I am guilty.
Yeah. I mean, who isn't? Come on. It's so easy. It's so
Definitely
easy.
bought Jeff Bezos like a steering wheel for his yacht. I don't know what I purchased, but I
Oh, Lord.
for him. And some I bought some cog on the Wii. I don't know what I bought, but you know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like,
I got
oh
you.
my God, I need to have
Hmm.
that. It's so pretty. But in also looking at that, when we get that way, I just got hella blurry. When we get that
Hmm.
way, we also need to look at, what am I trying to fill?
Yeah,
What is empty within
absolutely.
me that I need to go out and shop, or that
Hmm.
I need to go out and have that drink, or that I need to go out and
Yeah.
have that drug?
And Milan, at the heart of this is perhaps our Western, because I don't live in the East. I'm going to speak about our Western, individualized, very competitive, not so much community-driven world. We are, we don't live in systems of um, humans. Um, and this is at the heart of our problem, is the biggest lie of happiness, perhaps the biggest myth of happiness. And that's the myth of one day when I own that massive house,
Yeah.
that massive car. But it's interesting because it's also one day when I get married, or one day when I get divorced, or one day when I have children, or one day when they leave the house, or one day when I have the corner office, or when I'm retired, or when I don't have a migraine every day anymore, or I've got $5 million in the bank and I can start relaxing financially. The problem with this one day when I,
Mm.
because the big machine, ching ching, will keep telling you that that is the way. Just get more, because one day it's going to be enough. One day. The point is, we know from positive psychology that, or from psychology, that one day never comes. Because even when you get that thing, even when you get the wife, even when you divorce the wife, even when you have the children, even when you get the house, even whatever, when you get that, very soon, within 2 months, 2 years of that thing that you desired all your life long, you adapt to this new level of great fortune. And
Mm.
we actually call it hedonic adaptation. It is a feature of being human, because it's a survival design, because it makes us go forward to it, it's a reward and dopamine driver. So with hedonic adaptation, we get ourselves on this treadmill of uh, seeking something, and forever being seeking towards a frontier of happiness that never arrives.
Mhm.
One day when and when one really, really gets this, that one day never will come. I mean, in that moment, it's incredible personal freedom and incredible personal accountability. Because then you get to this really scary place that it's not going to be external circumstances. It's not going to be about who won the election. It's not going to be about where you live or how you live or who you're with. And in fact, this happiness that we seek is actually a practice of mental mastery, and it's a muscle,
Mhm.
and it's a decision. I know I'm saying some really hard things, but it is a choice, no matter your circumstances, whether you're in trauma, whether you're in pain, whether you're unhappy, whether you are a victim of all sorts of things, to say, and still, I choose to be happy. I choose it because it's a disposition. It's not conditional on external circumstance. One day when I.
Mhm. Yeah, I 100% agree. It should be something more like one day when I have inner peace. I
And that is a massive muscle.
That's a
Yes.
massive muscle.
Yes.
There was a lady, she's passed away now.
Wow.
We shared the same birthday. She was the grandmother of a ex-boyfriend. Anyway, she was lovely. And she said to me, and this was so true, because I grew up in a lot of trauma, generational trauma, a lot of just regular trauma, new trauma,
Mm-hmm.
just trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, and this was really profound because I was having, we again, as we talked about, we spiral, right, with our thoughts. And you know, she said, when you're under 18, sure, you know what? I'll give it to you. You can blame your parents. But the moment you turn 18, that's on you.
Oh,
And I
love
was
that.
like, ouch.
Ouch. Ouch. Whoa. You've just put a lot of psychologists out of
Oh.
jobs.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was she
Oh,
but it's true. It's true. Like you got to take some, we all need
it's
to
true.
buck up and take some responsibility and choose, as you have said many times, choose. What's that thought going to be? What are you going to do with yourself? How are you going
Mm-hmm.
to live your life?
Absolutely.
What are you going to focus on? What are
Mm-hmm.
your values? Choose. But by the way,
Mm-hmm.
choose the right things. Love, peace,
Absolutely.
right?
Oh,
Conflict, nonviolence. Choose that.
they are they are reliable pathways to happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Or I not to highways of happiness.
True
We
story.
know that. We know that love, hope, gratitude are the three power thoughts, ways, dispositions, emotions, whatever,
Mhm.
that are most directly correlated to mental well-being. And you said something so beautiful. This accountability, taking radical accountability for your thoughts, what you think right now. And Milan, it's so true because our thoughts are not innocent once-off events. Actually, something like we have between 35,000 and 65,000 thoughts a day. 95% of that is on a repeat loop.
Mhm.
Here's the problem with a repeat loop. It builds greater neural connections so that you can repeat it more often. So if it's anger, resentment, fear, victimhood, um, if those are your playlists that you play every day in your head, those are the neural connections, and you will become a person that is helpless, hopeless, sad, mad. If you play those mixtapes. Forgive me, playlists.
Mhm.
Do you remember mixtapes? If
I
you play the play, yes, I know. Don't say the playlists of love, honesty, trust. If you play those, right action, those are the neural connections that grow, and this is who over time you become. So
Abs-
choosing that next thought, that next thing that you put your attention on, no matter how hard it is, that's the choice, moment to moment. I
Absolutely.
love that.
And I
Mm,
think, we can just stop it there because that is a beautiful way to summarize everything. Choose.
hmm.
Choose wisely.
Choose, choose wisely. Love, truth, peace.
Right. Conduct and nonviolence, 100%, 100%. Well, Erica, thank you so much.
Love.
Wow, this is, I hope you come back because obviously we have a lot to talk about. We could probably go on. We could have a series, Milan and Erica, just digging in. So
Digging in.
yeah,
Oh,
I would be
I
100%.
really love this. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you.
And
Really,
and you
thank you
too.
for
Thank
bringing,
you.
yeah, thank you for bringing values into schools. so unbelievably necessary, so profoundly necessary. So thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to 411 T Street, where we spill the tea on the stories that matter the most. Transformation isn't a single moment. It's the clarity and insight that drives meaningful change and connects us all. If today's episode struck a chord, hit subscribe and share. Let's keep these conversations flowing and inspire real movements. 411 T Street. Get the info, spill the truth, spark the change.